I wanna take you for a ride. 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 I wanna take you for a ride.
For any gamer old enough to remember the 1990s, you undoubtedly remember how huge the fighting game genre was during that decade. This all started towards the beginning of the decade with a little-known, obscure game called Street Fighter II, which was just an overhyped game that mysteriously blew up into this huge thing for some reason. Kidding, Street Fighter II was a frickin' phenomenon when it came out in 1992, and various other iconic fighting games like Virtua Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Tekken only fueled the 1990s fighting game frenzy. The end result of all this were tons of console ports, imitators, spin-offs, and all kinds of other media that sought to cash in on the fighting game craze. With companies like Capcom, SNK, and Namco competing for the pizza grease-covered quarters of 90s kids and teens, each company tried finding new ways to get more people into arcades by coming up with crazier and crazier concepts. During the mid-90s, Capcom had acquired the license to make games featuring Marvel characters. While this started out innocently enough with games like X-Men, Children of the Atom, and the 1995 tournament fighter Marvel Superheroes, some genius at Capcom thought one day, hey, why don't we make a fighting game where characters we own the rights to fight a bunch of characters Marvel gave us the rights to? Yeah! And the rest was history. The first game in the Marvel Versus series was the incredibly good X-Men vs. Street Fighter in 1996. What would eventually follow after this game were tons of other excellent Capcom Versus titles that would have Capcom characters duking it out with various SNK, Tatsunoko, and Namco characters as well. Hell, I'm surprised Capcom vs. General Mills or Capcom vs. McDonald's never happened at this point. But anyhow, what we did end up getting were several incredibly good over-the-top fighting games unlike anything else at the time, and frankly, unlike anything else since. Join me now as I take a look at the top 5 Capcom Versus games to determine the very best that came out of this genius 1990s Capcom fever dream. Number 5, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Funny enough, this list ironically starts out with a game released well after the 1990s and well after the fighting game boom of that decade ended. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was the long-awaited sequel to the insanely good and insanely popular Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which, by the way, there's absolutely no way in hell that game is going to appear on this list. Just go ahead, banish the thought before you disappoint yourself. Don't say I didn't warn you. But yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was released all the way back in 2011, long after Capcom's crossover fighters had gone dormant since the early 2000s. However, this game sort of revived the crossover fighting game genre with the pretty good Street Fighter X Tekken that followed the year after. But it wasn't Marvel vs. Capcom 3's initial release that makes this list. No, the updated version, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, makes our list due to how much of an improvement it was over its predecessor. In addition to gameplay tweaks and additional modes, a ton of new characters were introduced, bringing the grand total to a whopping 50 characters. If there's one thing that makes a great fighting game great, it's having a ton of choices to beat the shit out of your opponent with. Am I right? And luckily, you're given series staples like Wolverine, Ryu, Spider-Man, and Chun-Li, but also given certain characters way out of left field like Firebrand, MODOK, Arthur, and Taskmaster. I mean, damn. But as mentioned earlier, the gameplay was substantially improved to include more balance, as well as tweaks that made the game way more competitive as well. All of this also made the game way more accessible for casual players too. The end result is a game that makes you feel like a frickin' force of nature just by mashing buttons, but also heavily rewards you for knowing what the hell you're doing. Despite it being released long after the nostalgic years of the fighting game boom, this game captures the spirit about as close as you can possibly get for a game released within the past decade. For these reasons and so many others, this game absolutely deserves its spot at the bottom of this list. Number 4, Marvel vs. Capcom. While the Capcom Versus series was certainly a well-known and beloved franchise by the late 90s, it was 1998's Marvel vs. Capcom that really helped propel this series into mainstream popularity. Taking what made the previous two Capcom Versus games great and cranking it up a few notches, Marvel vs. Capcom offered insanely fast-paced gameplay, a crazy combo system, seizure-inducing specials, and improved visuals over its predecessors. In addition to all that, it had a great soundtrack soundtrack using various remixes of Capcom classics, but also giving each Marvel character their own theme song, but dipped in Capcom awesomeness. Marvel vs. Capcom was a massive achievement when it came out, and it's hard to understate how big of a deal this game was at the time. And of course, many fans were overjoyed when this game was ported to various consoles, including the Dreamcast and PS1 back in 1999. Unless, of course, you bought the PS1 version. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the PS1, but seriously, this should have never happened given the limited hardware performance to handle this game and the various compromises that took place as a result. Seriously though, if you're gonna own Marvel vs. Capcom, just make sure you own the Dreamcast version, or if you really want to go big, go hunt down an old arcade cabinet. Either way, you won't regret it. Number 3, Capcom vs. SNK 2. Okay, let's take a vacation from Cape Shitland just for a minute. Okay, kidding, kind of. And pit Japanese fighting game developer versus Japanese fighting game developer. By releasing Capcom vs. SNK in 2000, both companies made the dreams of millions of 90s fighting game fans come true. Whether you were a die-hard Street Fighter fanboy, or you were one of those weirdos that hovered around a Neo Geo NVS cab like flies on a dead carcass, this game allowed both camps to settle the score and find out which side was better. But regardless of how good the original Capcom vs. SNK was, it was its sequel that really blew our minds. Capcom vs. SNK 2 was released just a year later in 2001 and absolutely outdid the first game in every way possible. The roster dramatically increased in size, full 3D stages were added in, multiple game modes and playstyles were incorporated, and maybe the most ridiculous fighting game announcer of all time was cast. I mean, seriously, this guy is hilarious, just listen.
Check your training wheels at the door, ladies and gentlemen. This is gonna be one incredible battle that won't easily be forgotten. Some may say that it was luck that helped this team to advance. That doesn't matter to me, because the bottom line is that this team won. They just better keep in mind that luck works in many mysterious ways.
But the huge bump in the roster combined with those multiple play modes and styles meant you had an unforgettably amazing fighting game that was hard to put down. Having Kyo from King of Fighters team up with Ryu from Street Fighter still gives me goosebumps, and the best part is you still have one more character to kick ass with. Given how many ports of Capcom vs. SNK 2 there were, you have absolutely no excuse to go pick this game up and enjoy the hell out of it. And trust me, enjoy the hell out of it, you will. Number 2, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. During the mid to late 90s, one of my favorite things to do was go to my local roller rink near where I grew up. However, I mostly wasn't going there to skate around with my friends while listening to the Spice Girls and Cotton Eye Joe. No, 90% of the time was spent throwing quarters into the roller rink's various arcade games, like Area 51, Maximum Force, Time Killers, and X-Men vs. Street Fighter. In the case of X-Men vs. Street Fighter, my friends and I loved that game. However, one day we went to go play it, something was a little different. Maybe we just assumed it was still the same game, but we noticed the roster of fighters had mostly changed and there were a few levels added in, and even the old levels were a little different than they were before. Being a stupid kid, I just assumed it was still the same game but with a few superficial changes, kinda like with the various versions of Street Fighter 2. Little did I know, however, I was actually playing the sequel to X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, and there was way more going on for this game than just a few different characters and stages. 1997's Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter was definitely an improvement over its predecessor. In addition to all the superficial differences I mentioned before, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter's gameplay was substantially improved over the previous game. I mean, holy crap, the polish and refinement in the gameplay was so good that it almost made the previous game obsolete. Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter's aerial combat, combo system, and specials were all significantly improved over these same gameplay elements in X-Men vs. Street Fighter, making it an absolute joy to play. The improvements were so well done that Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter actually plays better than even its sequel. Yep, despite how fun and over-the-top Marvel vs. Capcom is, it just doesn't play as smooth or as precisely as Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Playing this game is absolute bliss, so much so that it's actually one of my favorite fighting games of all time. However, if you're going to play this game, just make sure you're playing it either on the Saturn or in the arcade, since once again the PS1 port is kinda trash. So, with all that said, what game could be number 1 on our list? Number 1, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Yeah, I know, I'm sure all of you saw this coming from a mile away before you even clicked on this video, but yep, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 still remains the undisputed king of the Capcom Versus series, and also one of the best fighting games ever made. There has never been a game that somehow felt so insane, over the top, and at times even broken, yet have such a high degree of depth and complexity that it's been played competitively for decades after its release. And at a whopping 56 characters to choose from, this 3-on-3 tag team fighting game is still burned brightly into the hearts and minds of millions as being one of the most memorable and special fighting games ever released, period. Its combo system, larger than life specials, stages, soundtrack, characters, I mean, Jesus, just everything about this game is awesome. If you happen to be playing this game on one of its home console ports, you will also find yourself addicted to both its gameplay and delivery of sensory overload, but mostly to its insane amount of unlockables you acquire by playing this game over and over again. I don't know about everybody else, but unlockables in fighting games are kind of like crack for me. And guess what? There isn't a shitty PlayStation port this time. Nope, in fact the PS2 port of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is actually really damn good, as is the Xbox version as well. Whatever way you decide to play this game, including its modern HD remaster, you seriously cannot go wrong. I'd actually be a little surprised if anyone watching this video right now hasn't played Marvel vs. Capcom 2 yet, but if for some reason you haven't, you have not lived until you've played this game. Seriously though, drop whatever NPC bullshit you're currently doing and go and play this game now. But there you have it, the top 5 Capcom Versus games. Marvel fans, Capcom fans, SNK fans, it doesn't really matter. These are all amazing games, including most that didn't make the list as well. But thanks again for watching this weirdo's videos, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care.